Welcome to Convince Me. We are back for week 6. This is the top of the power hour, the only NFL pregame show with all the stuff you care about, none of the fluff you don't. I am Chad Millman. Over the next 30 minutes, my Action Network buddies, Sean Koerner, Chris Raybon, Simon Hunter, will convince me what props, what sides, what totals we should bet for today's entire NFL slate. Plus, we have Evan Abrams with market reports and trends that make you sound smarter than your friends. We will also welcome Dr. Nick Giffen, the host of Bet What Happens Live, who will take us through the latest need to know from our awesome luck rankings. Don't forget, bottom half of the hour, we got Gilles Gallant, Brian Matthews with the touchdown show. Gilles just missing a Gabe Davis anytime touchdown in the Jags Bears. Before we begin, a reminder, like this video and subscribe to the Action Network YouTube page. All the picks we discussed today are tracked for free in the award-winning Action Network app. Download it today. All right, first, before we get into the picks, let's take a look at the season-long leaderboard for our experts. A very tight race. Koerner, 8-7. Simon, 9-6. Raybon, 9-6. Everyone around that 3-2. One little outlier there. Bottom right corner. Raybon, 4-1 in the spreads. Continues to crush it. Everyone's got to watch the Sunday Six-Pack live in the Action Network YouTube page Wednesday evenings to get Raybon's picks early. But let's start with some props. Sean Koerner, in the immortal words of Mick Jagger, in honor of the London game, start me up.
All right, I'm going to go with Spencer Rattler under 183.5 passing yards. I gave this out on Prop Drop yesterday, and it's dropped a few yards, but still like the under here. Of course, he gets the start today for the injured Derek Carr. But Chad, as you know, I heavily bet preseason. I watch every game. I monitor every position battle. And that QB battle between Spencer Rattler and Jake Koerner was as close as it gets. So I think this is one of those spots where if the Saints are playing with the lead, it's probably, Rattler's playing well. They're probably leaning on the run a bit. That's a path for the under to hit. I think they do not want him to clear this number. They want to lean on the run here. However, if they do get behind, they end up in a trailing game script, maybe due to Rattler making some mistakes. I think they would have a fairly short leash when it comes to him today and potentially pivot to Jake Koerner. I've been attacking these types of props quite a bit this year, and the last 3 that I've hit, the quarterback was benched in game, so I'm trying to keep that streak going. The alternative is Malik Willis back in week 2 when the Packers did play with the lead for most of the game. He also stayed under this prop. So this is one of those unique props where kind of both game scripts lend towards the under here. So that's why I'm projecting him closer to, 173.5 yards, but I still give this around a 60% chance to hit, just kind of because both game scripts kind of bail us out here on the under. So I love the value we're getting still under 183.5 yards for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, that prop drop show on Saturday afternoons is just amazing. And if you're not watching it and you like to bet props or you want to hear what Koerner has to say, Koerner, I love how you also just give a little bit of time so people can open up all their apps and find the right screen so they can hit it as soon as you say it. Spencer Rattler under 183 passing yards. Simon, let's go.
Going Chris Godwin over 61.5 receiving yards. And it's really just about the matchup with this Tampa Bay team versus the Saints. We know the history. Mike Evans gets covered by Lattimore. It's that simple. And we see it time and time again in his career. Godwin does well against the Saints because he's going against their worst corners. And nothing changed when Baker came in after Tom Brady left. With Baker in his career, he's averaged over 88 yards receiving against his team. So we already know that him and Baker have a chemistry against the Saints. In his career, Godwin averaged 77 yards per game this season. In his career against the Saints, he's also above 85 yards receiving per game. So it's not just the Baker effect, right? It's always the matchup that Mike Evans, the Saints shadow their whole defense towards him. gives Mike Evans the one-on-ones, and he usually wins those one-on-one matchups, and Baker knows that. So I love this number. It's ticked up. It opened at 59. Now it's up to 61.5. I still like it. I'd bet this up to 70, especially with his season average being at 77 yards per game. So like this matchup for Godwin, especially after last week. Despite all those points, he really didn't do that much in that game against Tampa. And we've seen it time and time again. When he has a down game, he bounces back the next game. So, yeah, this is a nice play here, especially with the matchup with Mike Evans.
Yeah, this Saints-Bucks game, if you're looking for a way in, Koerner just gave you one. Simon just gave you one. The line has bounced around so much because of the Derek Carr news that you might be a little bit anxious to bet the sides. So there's a couple of options. Chris Raybon, what say you?
Let's go Drake Maye over 164.5 passing yards against the Houston Texans in his first start. So we know last week Josh Allen really struggled against Houston. I expected that. You know, I think I gave out the Texans on this show here. Houston this week, though, without cornerback Kamari Lassiter, safety Jimmy Ward, they've given up 169 or more to every other quarterback they faced. And I went back and looked it up. Since 2018, 70% of rookie quarterbacks in their first start have thrown for at least 170 yards, and 14 of 17 top 10 picks, which is 80%, threw for at least $180 in their first start since 2018. So, you know, Sean is on the right track with Rattler kind of going under. His number was a little higher, but I think Drake Maye's number is a little low. And I think Nick's going to talk to you later about the fact that Drake Maye doesn't really like to check it down either. So I think this is going to be a more wide open Patriot offense, a little more down the field, especially because Ramondre Stevenson, their top running back, is out this week. So like Drake Maye over 164.5 passing yards.
Wow, this is a tough one. I was convinced I was going with Spencer Rattler and the under 183 until you started giving your spiel here, Raybon. But I'm going with Spencer Rattler. Under 183 yards in his first game with the Saints. All right, let's get on to some sides. Sean Koerner, fire away.
All right, I'm going with the Raiders +3 here, although it is creeping up. Wouldn't mind buying the half point here to get +3.5, but you know, 80% of the action has been on the Steelers this week, but the line's been parked at 3. So you know, books are kind of scared to bump this up because I think the sharp money is on the Raiders here because you know this Steelers offense has been in a bit of a slump the past couple weeks. You know, Najee Harris has been inefficient all season. George Pickens was essentially bench last week for not finishing routes. So we'll see how that goes this week. But the one thing I think the market is kind of overlooking here is the fact they lost starting right guard Jaden Daniels back in week 4. He tore his ACL. He was having an excellent season. He ranked 3rd overall among all offensive linemen in PFF grade. He was just doing an excellent job. And ever since he went down, you know, Fields has been getting a lot more pressure. I mean, we saw them go up against the Cowboys, who were missing Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, and they were still allowing a ton of pressure. So I think that Daniels loss is bigger than people realize. And on the defensive side, you know, they're dealing with a cluster injury situation on their defensive line. You know, they're still without Alex Highsmith, who's still out. But they're also going to be without Nick Herbig and DeMarvin Leal. So, you know, they still have TJ Watt, but it might be easier to slow him down without these other pieces, you know, they have to kind of worry about. Plus, you know, the Raiders deciding to bench Gardner Minshew for Aiden O'Connell, I think gives him a slight boost. Raybon knows. Aiden O'Connell is my boy. Love the guy. He doesn't have to be an MVP candidate here. He simply needs to be better than Gardner Minshew, and my money's on that. And we saw, you know, flashes of his upside last year. He led the Raiders to that random 60-point outburst against the Chargers. So he does have that in him. So I like backing the Raiders here at +3.
I want to deviate for 1 second. Explain yourself on Aiden O'Connell.
He's like my comp for him is kind of like Jameis Winston. He'll make some amazing throws at times, make some boneheaded plays, but I think he got those out of his system last year. He's ranked 20th in EPA per dropback the past 2 seasons. So again, he's probably closer to average than people realize. But he's just, I think he's definitely an upgrade over Gardner Minshew.
All right. That's interesting. changing my tune there for a little bit. This was feeling like a pass. Look, it's a later game, so if we can wait and get a 3.5, that might make it a little more interesting. Simon. Oh, Simon. Oh, Simon. I love you so much, and yet you're asking me to do things that are just so terrible.
Someone's got to do it. This has convinced me. On Sundays, one of us always gives out the Panthers, and this week it's my turn. So Panthers +6. You know you love this spot, right? It's a fade on Kirk Cousins. You're back in one of the unluckiest teams in football, Chad. You know you love the luck rankings, and it backs up this pick here. So when we're looking at this matchup, I get it. It's really tough to see what Panthers can do well, but offensively, there is a way for this team to put up points and move the ball, right? They're not that terrible since Andy Dalton's taken over. And defensively, it's really, can they get stops on Kirk on third down? Like, that's going to be the key to this game, looking at this matchup. I think they can. I think they do have the pieces offensively to keep up with Atlanta if Atlanta can move the ball, and they also are able to get stops defensively. And we've seen historically, Kirk Cousins is bad in this spot, right? He's not great after straight-up wins in his career, especially when he's getting 4 or more points. In his career, he's, 4-14-1 against the spread after a straight-up win when he's favored by 4 points or more the next game. So right there, it's a bad spot for him. This season, right, we've talked about Atlanta a lot, Chad. They could easily sit in here 0-5. They've had a couple coin flip games that have broken their way at the end of the game, right? They won a game by 1 point. They won the next game by 2 points. And then we saw last week on Thursday, they won by 6 points in overtime, which was kind of fluky. Like, this team isn't as good as this number perceives it. I have this number closer to 4. We're getting free 2.5 points of value here just because they won a fluky overtime game last week. So this is a great spot to fade this Atlanta team coming off a big win.
Not that I want to make your argument for you, but the truth is I did bet the Panthers. They were available at 6.5 this morning, Sunday morning. So I grabbed a 6.5. Been waiting all week for it to get there. To prove your point about Atlanta in fluky spots, this season, there are 3 games. The Eagles, remember they beat the Eagles. They had a 2-minute drive late in the game. The Eagles had a 97.6% win probability with less than 2 minutes in that game. Week 3, they beat the Saints on a long field goal. The Saints had an 85% win probability with 41 seconds left. In overtime, week 5 against the Bucs, you just mentioned it, with 22 seconds left, the Bucs had a 93% win probability. So there are some fluky, freaky things happening for the Falcons that give me a little more solace betting on the Panthers at +6.5, which is what I got at 6. Obviously, people can still take. Raybon. It's not like the theme here today is going to be, beauty pageant. We got Aiden O'Connell. We got the Panthers. I'm foreshadowing Raybon.
Yeah, if the Panthers and the Raiders aren't bad enough for you, consider betting the Patriots +6.5 against the Houston Texans at home. Now, there are a couple of things about the Texans that I think are warning signs for failing to cover in this spot. The first thing is, you look at early down success rate, which is more predictive than things like third down and which, red zone, which kind of jump around a little bit. Early down success rate, Houston's second to last on offense in the league. They're worse than the Patriots on early downs. And that was with Nico Collins, who's their most explosive player, was leading the league in receiving yards coming into this week with 567. So those two things make it hard for Houston to kind of separate. They haven't won by more than 6 all year. That's including a game against Caleb Williams in his second start at home in Houston. So now you go on the road here. And I know you love the luck rankings. Houston, the luckiest team, despite being 1-4 against the spread, they're 4-1 straight up, and they've gotten lucky to be there. They're number 1 in luck. The Patriots are 26. So this is a big gap here, 56% in terms of our expected scores. And when you look back, these luck ranking differentials, 24 or more with a gap of 50% or more, have hit at 64% against the spread. So I like the New England Patriots here. I think it's a positive that, they really haven't seen too much film on Drake Maye. It's going to be harder to prepare for. And I mentioned they got some guys out in the secondary. So give me the Pats +6.5.
Can I have them both? I would like a special dispensation here to take both the New England Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to go with the Patriots. I've been on them all week. I know the numbers tick down. I got them at 7. I'm sure Simon and I will put them in our favorites podcast, pick 'em contest later today. We might put the Panthers in as well, but I'm taking the Patriots plus 6.5. I'm also on the Panthers. You can see it in the Action Network app. Obviously, some of these games that we're talking about are going to be the opposite of public sides. We all love to fade the public. Let's take a look at where the majority of the betting tickets are according to the Action app. For those who are new, the number of tickets generally represents who the public likes. The money percentages also available in the app indicate who the professionals like. Right now, 82% of the tickets are on Atlanta. We want to fade the public and be on the Panthers. 81% of the tickets on Houston. We want to fade the public and be on the Patriots. By the way, we're going to get to Sunday Night Football. 81% of the tickets on Cincinnati right now. All right. Our director of research, Evan Abrams, he's going to make us smarter, hopefully make us feel a little bit better about the bets we are making today. Evan?
We might be seeing a bit of a tide turn here, Chad. So Thursday night, the 49ers covered and won as public side. Right now, the Bears rolling as the public side could start 2-0, and we talked about on previous shows. Entering this Bears game in London, they are 29, 46-2 this season. Public side's not a great start, the worst in our database going back 20 years. But what I want to talk about now is 60% of tickets and 60% of the money. So basically everything rolling on one side. Those are 11 and 21 against the spread this season, 34%. So even worse than we were talking about before. But as I said, tides are turning. In the 1 p.m. window, we have 5 games currently matching that with the Texans, Colts, Bucks, Eagles, and Commanders. So big day, and the tides could be turning. All right, let's talk about Washington and Baltimore, because I think it's one of the games everyone really is interested in based off of how Jaden's played and the fact that how Lamar and Henry have played on the other side. So the Commanders lead the NFL in points through 5 games, 31 points per game. Unreal I'm even saying that at this point. But the last team to average 31 plus points per game through 5 games and be listed as a 6-point underdog or higher, which seems a little bit odd, except who you know is on the other side, was Drew Brees and the Saints back in 2016. So it has been a minute. Be a really great matchup today. And before I toss it to you for totals, let me give you one more. This is something I've been tracking personally, so I wanted to give it out to the crowd. So teams who lead at the half this season are 30 and 47 against the second half spread. 39%, failing to cover the second half spread by over 2 points per game. Last 3 seasons, in a 600 plus game sample size, it's still only 44% second half cover rate. So beware of the comeback when you're watching games today, guys.
That is fascinating. Wow. It's like, as a bettor, you're always sort of going with the rhythm of the game and, you know, even irrationally feeling good at halftime if your team is up, and then you know it's inevitably going to be a sweat. And this is great numerical evidence of that. Evan making us smarter as always. You know how else, everybody, you get a little smarter? You sign up for the Action subscription. If you want access to all of Action's pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Koerner and other members of the Action Analytics team. Plus, Pro just keeps getting better. You'll now get access to Koerner's anytime touchdown projections. Woo! That's new. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today. Use code POWER20 at sign up. One more time. That's POWER20 at sign up for $20 off. All right, Koerner, we talked about the luck rankings. Little preview from my point of view. Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I'm going with the Colts Titans under 43. And as you're alluding to, this is a luck total under. And as I went through my player projections process for the game, just a lot of signals pointed me to the under here as well. The Colts are coming off that wild game last week against the Jaguars where 71 total points were scored. Joe Flacco was under center for that game, so I kind of expected that. We saw a handful of 60-plus yard touchdowns in that game. But our expected score that fuels the luck rankings had it being closer to 47 total points scored. So I think, the public might be overreacting to that a bit. I'm expecting a much lower scoring environment this week with Anthony Richardson back under center because this Titans defense is very underrated right now, in my opinion. They made some significant additions in the offseason. They ranked top 10 in DVOA. They've allowed the fewest yards per game. But now they're coming out of their week 5 bye. I think that's given this new unit, more time to gel. They're getting Jeffrey Simmons back today. So I think, they're a defense I want to be investing in. And the Colts, they're probably going to, try to lean on the run today. But they're still without Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs in the league. They have Trey Sermon, who's, a great play in fantasy, but certainly a drop-off from Jonathan Taylor. So I think the Tennessee defense will slow down the Colts today a bit. And on the other side, that means the Titans will probably be able to lean on a more run-heavy conservative game plan and try to prevent Will Levis from making just another boneheaded, costly turnover. He's been on a generational meme run right now. So I think they want to keep the ball out of his hands as much as possible. And I think their defense will, certainly help that out today. So I think their game plan coming out of the bye will definitely lend towards the under here as well.
Yeah, look, every time I see Will Levis in that Mayo commercial, I just think there couldn't be a more appropriate spokesperson for Mayo right now at this point in his career than Will Levis. And yes, that is me bashing Mayo as a condiment. All right, Simon, go ahead.
Going with Green Bay under 47.5. And this matchup's really about the Arizona Cardinals, not just Green Bay, right? With both these teams, we've seen this year, everything they do is kind of established through the run. Now we're adding in bad weather, Chad. We finally have some bad weather this season, and apparently it's going to rain all day, all throughout this game, and we're going to get gusts 15 to 20 miles per hour. So I don't think it's going to fare well for Kyler Murray and his small hands and this offense. And then you mix in that Kyler historically, he's a good bet to make onto the under during his career. We've seen historically him on the road. It's a good bet when he goes on the road because usually it's bet up a little bit because he's an indoor team, so people think they're going to score points, where historically he goes under. So Kyler Murray is 22-11 to the under in his five seasons he's played in the NFL. So this is usually a spot I want to take him in the under just because his numbers are always moved up a little bit. Same with Green Bay, right? People perceive it as a great offense this year. I don't think Jordan Love's looked right since he's come back from this injury. I mean, if you just look at him per play, his drop back, his total has gone down significantly since just the start of this year, even compared to last year. So this seems like it's going to be an ugly, sloppy game that both teams are going to lean on the run, Chad. So I like this. I bet it down to 46.5.
We're living in some kind of crazy world where you look at 47 and think, wow, that's a lot of points for an NFL game.
You're right.
You know what I mean? Raybon, what do you got?
Thanks for the segue, Chad. I'm going Giants, Bengals under 47. No Malik Neighbors for the Giants. That's big. They got an extra touchdown last week in that Seattle game on the blocked field goal. That's not going to happen every week. Then you look at the weather. This is another game you could see some rain. It's about a 20-25% chance, so not a guarantee, but could see some rain in this one. And for whatever reason, the Giants, Daniel Jones, they just play better on the road. Could have something to do with that weather, but Daniel Jones at home, 22-9 to the under in his career, 71%. And we know the primetime unders are going under at a 60% clip over the last 5 years as well. So Giants, Bengals under.
I'm surprised you didn't use that for your Sunday night football play. That makes me interested to see what you're going to go with. I'm going with the Colts and the Titans because we got two terrible quarterbacks. We got a luck rankings play. We got Jeffrey Simmons coming back, who people forget. And Raybon, you mentioned this years ago, and I'm glad Koerner brought it up. Jeffrey Simmons, to me, he's up there at the same level as Chris Jones, DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, he plays at an elite level as a defensive tackle, especially against the run. So I like playing the under here in the Titans and the Colts. That will be my choice. All right. We've talked about the luck rankings a lot. It's my favorite stat in the Action Network universe. It takes all the noise out of randomness in these games to give us a more accurate picture of a team's performance week to week. For those who want to know more, check them out in the Action Network app or actionnetwork.com. We got some matchups this week. We got the Patriots are unlucky. We talked about the Commanders and the Ravens game. That is a luck total to the under. We just talked about the Colts and the Titans. That is a luck total to the under. Bills, Jets, luck total as well. Nick Giffen, bring us on, buddy. Tell us what we got.
Yeah, so we're going to go right away, and I got these out of order. We're going to the 4 p.m. game here with Atlanta, Carolina. I always think they're East Coast teams. They should be at the 1 p.m. segment. But anyway, we're going to take Carolina over their team total, 19.5 points. In this matchup, Carolina is the unluckiest team in terms of a matchup versus Atlanta by scoring luck. Now, our luck rankings is on record luck, but also on scoring luck is another way we can look at it. And Carolina has the 3rd highest luck team total of the week. So we expect them to go above their team total. Teams that have combined for these two teams here have combined for just 54 minutes of possession on average. So somebody's got to possess the ball more. Chad, there's 6 minutes of possession left out there. So you got to think that will bode well for potentially both of these teams going over just by having the ball more. And then also just positive regression on Andy Dalton on his completion percentage over expectation. He's at a career low right now. And he faces a low pressure defense, Atlanta in the bottom 3 in terms of pressure rate this year. Both the games Andy Dalton faced low pressure defenses. They put up a ton of points last week versus a high pressure D in the Bears. They did not.
I mean, what kind of world are we living in where we're all betting on Andy Dalton because we think he's been playing so much better than Bryce Young, and he's playing as bad as he ever has in terms of completion percentage. All right, what's your next luck bet?
Yeah, we're going to go to that Houston-New England game that, of course, Simon gave out as Houston covering. And if Houston covers, I like Antonio Gibson under 3.5 receptions. Now, it is minus 160, but I'm going to tell you, I have this at minus 225 as fair value on this one. So still plenty of value here. New England, of course, the unlucky team. I said Simon, I meant Raybon. I'm not going to steal from him there. But 25 luck difference, 56% luck gap. Should keep this game close. When the games have been close for New England, Antonio Gibson only 3 targets this year, 7 targets and 2 blowout losses. Now, I know obviously this was all with Ramondre Stevenson, but even if you scale those up a little bit, I can't get to 3 receptions, let alone as many targets there. And Houston, they also allow the 2nd fewest targets per game to running backs. And Drake Maye, as Raybon mentioned, has been throwing the ball downfield to his wide receivers, his tight ends in college at a much higher rate than most college quarterbacks do. So that might continue in the NFL. Only 1 target in his 8 pass attempts to a running back so far.
All right, well, look, we promise all the stuff and none of the fluff, and I can guarantee there's not a single NFL preview show on the air today that has spent as much time on Indy and Tennessee as we are. Take us home.
Yeah, so Sean was on the under here, partly because of the luck rankings. So we're going to go to Indy's team total under 20.5 points. Of course, this is a luck total of minus 6.6, which is right in that perfect sweet spot for a luck under for the full game. But Tennessee has been the unlucky team here, as we've talked about. They're 32nd in the luck rankings. This is the 3rd largest luck gap of the week. So probably Tennessee covers as well. And if they do, with this being an under and Tennessee covering, that would mean the Colts stay under their team total. The Colts have the 2nd lowest luck team total of the week. And of course, there is potential wind in play as well here in Nashville. So Indy team total under 20.5 is the 3rd luck bet this week.
All right, Nick Giffen, luck bets on the show this year, 10-5, outpacing everybody. Great stuff. Let's move on. Sunday night football, Bengals visiting the Giants. As we mentioned, the public is all over the Bengals, who are 3.5-point favorites. The total, Raybon talked about at 47. Let's get to our picks. Koerner, start us off.
I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy Jr. of the Giants to go over 57.5 rushing yards. With Devin Singletary ruled out, Tracy's going to get another start here. And last week in his first start in the NFL, he went off for 129 yards on the ground. I expect the Giants will want to lean on the run again this week with Malik Neighbors out yet again. And I think they'll be successful doing so. This Bengals defense ranks 22nd in DVOA against the run. And I figured, the run D would take a step back this year after, they lost their premier run stuffer in DJ Reader, who's now with the Lions. So I think this is a good spot for Tracy Jr. to, have an encore game here. And I'm projecting him closer to 62 yards.
All right. Well, we're kind of leaning Giants right now. Simon, tell us more.
Yeah, Chad, going with the Giants. This is a nice spot to fade the public in these primetime Sunday night games, right? And open up the Action app, you can see over 80% of the tickets, 80% of the money has come in on this Bengals team. No Neighbors. Why isn't this number budged, Chad? It's still sitting there at 3.5. Very telling. The sports books like their position. They can see this being a close game. And how can you trust the Cincinnati defense not to be backdoored, right? This is not that defense that we're used to in these past years. This is a very beatable defense. They can be run on, they can be passed on. They really have no strength to it right now. And we've seen Daniel Jones historically against these defenses give up 24 points per game. He's great, but as a dog, he's 10-6 against the spread as a dog versus defenses that give up that many points. So it's a nice spot for to take this Giants team. Let's ride the hot hand. Daniel Jones, 3.5. Got to take it.
Yeah, look, Brian Daboll has been scheming lights out. Like, this team has played much better than I think people have been giving it credit for. And certainly we're seeing that reflected in the line. This line ticked up to Giants +4 when the Neighbors news became official. And the wise guys grabbed it in about 3 seconds. That's how long it lasted at +4. So that tells you everything you need to know about which direction professional bettors are going on this game. Raybon, your last pick of the day.
Let's go with Andre Yosevach over 21.5 receiving yards. Now, his number's coming down because, T. Higgins has been back a few games and Drew Phillips playing really well for the Giants, but I'm not scared of any Giant quarterback, first of all. Second of all, Yosevach has cleared this in 4 out of 5 with 26 or more yards. And even in the 2 games last week where his target share went down, he had a 29-yard reception in one game and a 39-yard reception in the other game. So he's getting deeper targets to kind of make up for this. He could still go over this on just one catch. And he's averaging 40 yards per game in the games T. Higgins has played. So he's still on the field 80% of the time, even with Higgins coming back. They're still using that 3 wide set predominantly. So like Yosevach should go over 21.5 receiving.
Raybon, let's be clear. You're not really afraid of anything. So I'm certain you're not going to be afraid of any Giants quarterbacks. I'm going with the Giants at +3.5 in this game. And I like Simon's logic. And I think this is the side you want to be on for tonight. If you want to parlay all these together and do a super fabulous SGP, I'm talking about Tracy over his rushing yards, the Giants +3.5, Yosevach over his receiving yards, +394, depending on where you're looking. That will be our SGP for the night. This has been Convince Me. Stay tuned for the touchdown show. Good luck, everybody.
And we are back for the touchdown show for week 6. I'm Gilles Gallant with the Action Network, along with Brian Matthews, aka the BMAT. Each week, we cover the anytime touchdown market in the NFL. We'll have best bets for 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. We're going to have some touchdown parlays. We're going to look at Sunday Night Football as well, put together a touchdown same game parlay for Sunday Night Football. We'll also have a special guest, Jared Smith with Fox Sports Radio. He's been a staple in the betting community for years. He's going to give us his best anytime touchdown bet of the week. But BMAT, before we talk about this week, let's talk about last week. We had a hell of a week last week. You got Brian Thomas Jr. for a touchdown, James Cook. I got Kyler Murray and T. Higgins for 2 touchdowns. Do you think we can match what we did last week?
Hey, it's a momentum game, right? So we're going to have to do a heat check today. I think we got to build on that momentum. I think we're in for a big week, though.
Yeah, momentum, I think, is a definite thing that we're on right now. And right now, I want to carry that momentum. So here's how the show is going to work. We're going to start off with our best touchdown bets with the lowest odds. Then we're going to work our way up. And then we're going to just unleash our spicy touchdown bets. More often than not, they're odds of 10-1 or higher. That's coming near the end of the show. But let's start off with some best bets, B-Matt. I'm going right to the Colts versus Titans game. And I am looking at a high-priced wide receiver who has had one good game this year, but hasn't really done much in the other games. And that is Calvin Ridley to score a touchdown today against that Colts defense. He's around plus 240 is what I bet it. He's around plus 215, plus 220 right now. Now, Calvin Ridley has had back-to-back duds. Part of it, though, in week 4 was not really needing to throw against the Dolphins and that dreadful offense. So in week 4, the Titans didn't really have to do anything offensively, and then they're just coming off a bye. But as I mentioned, he did have that one good game. He had a 2-touchdown game versus the Jets in week 2. And this Colts defense, they play cover 3 at 42% rate. That's one of the highest rates in the NFL. And they've gotten torched by deep threats like George Pickens, Rome Odunze, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., like you cashed last week, B-Matt. So all those receivers kind of profile the same as Ridley. They line up outside. They've got a huge A-dot. Head coach Brian Callahan, if you're into the coach speak, said this week we need to find more ways to get Calvin the ball. So I think if Will Levis just cannot turn the ball over, I love our chances for Ridley to score a touchdown. Spoiler alert, we'll talk about this more in the spicy section. I did ladder him for 2 touchdowns as well. Now, I will say I am aware that Sean Koerner, our player prop projection master here at Action, has taken the under on Calvin receptions. So just know that he's probably going to score a touchdown, but he'll probably only have 3 catches. So Calvin Ridley to score a touchdown at plus 240. B-Matt, before we move on to your best bet, what do you think of Calvin in this matchup against the Colts?
You know what? It's a good matchup, and you got to look at coach speak, especially at the wide receiver position. You know, if you pay a guy a lot of money to come in and be your wide receiver 1, you know, and then he has 2 games where he's got maybe 50 combined receiving yards. You'd think in a good matchup, you'd maybe want to give him a few opportunities to score. So I think, I like it. And hey, look, maybe the under on the receptions and the touchdown, like you said.
Yeah, a little negative correlation parlay where you could take under 3 receptions and a touchdown for Calvin might be a good idea as well. So that is my first bet. We are going with Calvin Ridley to score a touchdown on this Colts defense. B-Matt, what is your best bet for week 6?
Yeah, so this one actually, I'm going to go with Joe Mixon anytime touchdown. And this one actually rolled out at plus 210, which I think was a mistake. Yeah, but I still at plus 140, I still think this is a really good line. And if you look at it, the Texans are going to be without Nico Collins. We know that. So I think everyone immediately assumes, all right, well, the passing game, it's going to Diggs and Dell, which it will, but I think this is the matchup that dictates more of a ground game. So I look at Joe Mixon, and if you look at his only full game this year, he was given 30 carries for 159 yards and a touchdown against the Colts. And the Texans, rushing attack hasn't been hasn't threatened anybody the last couple of weeks with Ogunbowale and Cam Akers. And I think when you get Mixon back and you look at what running backs have done to the Patriots, you have Zach Moss, Zach Charbonnet, Breece Hall, Jordan Mason have all scored touchdowns against this Patriots defense. And I think that's kind of the blueprint to beat them. So I'm going to go Joe Mixon plus 140 for an anytime touchdown.
I'm still shocked, B-Matt, because we talked about this coming into the show, like that he is still at plus 140, anything over plus 120, essentially, because even coming into week 1 where he had like 30 carries, a couple touchdowns, he was around plus 120, plus 130 at that price. Now, he is coming off the ankle injury, but I mean, at some spots right now, I'm seeing Cam Akers as high as plus 450. So clearly Mixon is healthy enough that he's going to be going this week. And I just think anything over plus 120, I'm shocked that they're hanging a line like that, especially since how the Patriots have been getting run over by main running backs from their opponents, right? So Joe Mixon at plus 140, another solid find by you. Let's now move on to Sunday Night Football. Let's talk about Bengals-Giants. Right now, Bengals-Giants totals around 3.5, totals around 48. The spread is around 3.5 for the Bengals. Let's look at the touchdown odds now for Sunday Night Football. And right at the top, You've got Jamar Chase at -100, Zach Moss at +115, and you got a pair of Giants running backs around +125, +130, Chase Brown around +145, my guy T. Higgins around +150, and then a few Giants like Wan'Dale Robinson at +210, Darius Slayton at +230, and then Dimes around +275. B-Matt, let's do a same game parlay with this. Right now, I love T. Higgins in this game. I've already bet him. He's going to be a part of my Sunday Night Football touchdown preview. But I like T. Higgins in this game. Who should we pair him with to have a same game parlay for Sunday Night Football?
Hey, look, I thought he was going to score last week. I think Daniel Jones is a pretty solid pick here. A couple of red zone rushes last week. No Devin Singletary, no Malik Neighbors. You know what? Why don't we pair him up with Danny Dimes?
Yeah. So, all right. So we're going to do Dimes. So if we pair up T. Higgins, who coming off a game with 2 touchdowns, 14 targets, and Daniel Jones, who has some red zone carries, but just hasn't really punched one in yet. If we pair those two together, we're getting a same game parlay around +750. I think this is a pretty solid one. I don't really want to add a third leg to this because while I do think there is going to be some scoring from the Giants side, because I'm not really too ambitious on this Bengals defense. I do think let's keep it to 2 legs, and then we'll get a nice little payout here around +750. So that's the same game parlay for Sunday Night Football for T. Higgins and Daniel Jones. If you pair them together at DraftKings, it's around +750. All right, let's now move to our second best bet of week 6. I went first to start us off. Matt, why don't you kick us off? What is your second best bet of week 6?
Yeah, so I'm roaming into Gilles territory here with the Dallas Cowboy, and I'm going to go Jaylen Tolbert at +270. Now, I went through a few different players that I had kind of lined up for the spot, and I just kept coming back to the fact that Jaylen Tolbert is the wide receiver 2 right now for this Cowboys offense. And now I know you can argue that Jake Ferguson might technically be the wide receiver 2 based on volume, but I mean, on the perimeter, it's CeeDee Lamb and then Jaylen Tolbert. So, the way I look at it is this is a game where you've got a high total. You've got the Lions, who are very, very good against the run, and the Cowboys, who haven't been able to run the ball very well, but they have been able to pass the ball. Oh, and the weakness of the Lions defense is their pass defense. So for me to see a 270 number on Jaylen Tolbert, who actually happens to lead the Cowboys in red zone targets, surprisingly, then I'm going to take it. He's got 2 touchdowns in his last 3 games. Brandon Cooks is out again. And I just think the ball is going to be going around. Dak's, passing yard totals somewhere around 280 yards. So if you look at that and say, okay, Jaylen Tolbert is going to have a pretty sizable role today. So I like Jaylen Tolbert at +270. I just think this is too good a number to pass up.
I mean, with the game on the line against the Steelers, they went to Jaylen Tolbert twice. Tolbert dropped it once, and then he caught the winning one on the 4th down. And I do find it interesting, too, from a DVOA perspective, defensive DVOA, that the Lions rank in the top 10 against wide receiver 1, but are down around 25 for wide receiver 2. And that's where Jaylen Tolbert will slot in. So pretty solid find by you, B-Matt. Jaylen Tolbert, obviously, I'm going to be rooting for it from a personal interest, but also from a betting interest that Jaylen Tolbert will score a touchdown today against the Lions.
Oh, man.
All right, I'm going back to the 1 p.m. slate, though. I'm looking at this Packers-Cardinals game because with the Cardinals involved, I just always feel like these games are going to be shootouts. And I'm looking at a touchdown score on the Cardinal side. Last week in this spot, we took Kyler Murray at 3-1. We cashed him. This time we're going to his tight end. We're going to take Trey McBride to score a touchdown. I grabbed it at +280. It's around +270, +260 right now. Anything over +250 is what I like Trey McBride for. Now, he came back from a concussion in week 5. He played 88% of snaps immediately. And he did score a touchdown, but he did see 9 targets. 2 of those were in the red zone. Elijah Higgins is actually the one who ended up vulturing us, but Trey McBride is still getting a lot of work. And this Packers defense, the secondary, I don't want to say they're overrated. I just want to say that they can be thrown on, but a lot of the time they get skewed as far as that goes because they get a lot of turnovers. They're NFL lead in interceptions force, them and the Vikings. Yeah. So, but they're bottom 10 in passing yards allowed, and they're bottom 5 in receiving touchdowns, and they're middle of the pack for defensive DVOA versus tight ends, allowed the 4th most targets to tight ends and 2 touchdowns. So I think Trey McBride, this is the game where he's going to score, and I love his odds over +250. B-Matt, I know Trey McBride is one of your guys. What do you think of Trey against the Packers defense today?
Yeah, I love the look. I think it's Trey day.
Trade day and everybody's celebrating. All right. All right. So those are our second best bets. I am on Trey McBride at plus 280, and BMAT is on Jaylen Tolbert at plus 270. Now let's bring in our special guest for the touchdown show for week 6, Jared Smith with Fox Sports Radio. Touchdown! And we are back, and we've got Jared Smith with Fox Sports Radio joining us now on the touchdown show. Jared, you're in Las Vegas right now, very early for you. I really appreciate you getting up early to be able to come on the touchdown show. And we've worked together. We've done a lot of space stuff in the space before, but I wanted to know from a touchdown perspective, what do you like for an anytime touchdown in week 6?
Well, let's go. I think the best way to shop for touchdowns is kind of, especially for someone who doesn't always do it every week as in-depthly as you do, take a game with a high total and try to find a player that you can pick multiple ways to score with. And I think Jaden Daniels is that exact fit. I got plus 160 over at Fendo. Again, we have multiple ways to win here. One, design runs by the goal line. We know Brian Robinson's not going to play. We think the goal line packages for Jaden Daniels have been solid so far. I think he'll get an extra look or two with Robinson out. And then, of course, you've got broken plays. Daniels actually leads the NFL in EPA generated on scrambles. Now, the Ravens haven't faced a true scrambling quarterback yet in a neutral game state. They faced Josh Allen, but that game was a pure blowout. They also faced Dak Prescott, not really a scrambler. Gardner Minshew, not a scrambler. Burrow, Mahomes, I know those guys can scramble, but it's not their number one priority. And last year, the Ravens actually allowed 52 rush yards over expectation against scrambling quarterbacks, which was the 8th most in the NFL. So I think Jaden Daniels can get in on the design runs on the goal line. He can get in on a broken play, on a scramble. And of course, highest total on the board should be a very high scoring game and a sneaky good rivalry game, Commanders and Ravens. These teams do not like each other.
Yeah, and the one thing I was going to say, too, about Jaden Daniels, obviously he leads all quarterbacks in red zone carries, but this being a game where they could potentially actually be trailing for once, thinking back to week 1 against the Buccaneers, where that was pretty much the case, where they were trailing most of the game, and Jaden Daniels ended up rushing for 2 touchdowns, a lot of it in garbage time, all counts the same. So Jaden Daniels is who you like for an anytime touchdown this week. Now, before we get you out of here, I wanted to ask you about one particular matchup, and it is with the Saints and the Buccaneers. We talked off air about Mike Evans. Is there any still possibility where maybe you like Mike Evans to get another touchdown this week against maybe Marcus Lattimore?
Yeah, that was so when I was going through my scans for the show, that one popped to me just because of the price. I mean, when they get down to the goal line, that's the Tampa Bay go-to guy, no doubt about it. And actually 5 touchdowns on just 23 catches this year. So a really high scoring rate. Anytime he's targeted, it tends to be around the goal line. And yeah, the Marshawn Lattimore matchup, that is must-see TV. And Evans wants to get in the end zone today. It's on the road. It's in New Orleans. He wants to quiet the crowd. He is the veteran leader on that Bucs offense. So I think that is a good avenue to go if you're looking for a receiver in that Tampa Bay New Orleans game.
B-Matt, do you think one of the two of Marcus Lattimore and Mike Evans, do you think one of them has a chance to maybe get ejected today, just out of those two?
I think you've got, if you're ever going to have a chance and you're handicapping ejections, this is probably going to be the highest you're going to see it. It's almost like, the days of the Aqib Talib, Michael Crabtree matchup, snatcher chain, you're going to get fireworks, 2 guys that are competing. So when it's all said and done, I wouldn't be surprised if one of them's ejected.
All right. So Jaden Daniels is the official pick, but Mike Evans, Jared was looking at him as well. Thinks he'd be able to take advantage of that matchup against the Buccaneers. Now, Jared, before we get you out of here, please tell us where we could find your content and where we could see what you got going on.
Yeah, you can follow me on socials at Jared Lee Smith, Fox Sports Radio every Saturday mornings, 6 to 9 Pacific, 9 to noon Eastern, leading up to kickoff, and then all the other content I produce during the week. I'm all over the map. You just follow me on Twitter. That's usually the best place to find me.
All right. So once again, his Twitter handle at Jared Lee Smith. Make sure and go follow him. He's putting out quality content every day. So Jared, thank you very much for joining the Touchdown Show, and bon chance, mon ami.
I appreciate it. Good luck today, gentlemen.
Touchdown! And we are back, and now let's look at our spicy touchdown bets for week 6. I've got 2. B-Matt has 1. B-Matt, why don't you tell us what is your spicy touchdown bet for week 6?
Yeah, so I'm going to go Justin Fields, 2+ touchdowns at 16 to 1.
I love this bet.
So look, I look at this. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns in his last 3 games. I think when you look at it, you see that there's going to be pressure from Max Crosby, in this Raiders defense. And you look at it, Fields has 11 red zone rushing looks, 3 touchdowns on the year. And I just think when you look around him, Fields kind of is the offense. Like when everything else fails and there's not really anybody to look at, like Fields is, all right, broken play. All right, we need you to go pick up some yards. Design run. So I just think it's been a key for them to this point. And, I see this as one of those games where I think Fields can really help his team by scrambling. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him score 2 touchdowns today.
Well, the one thing too about Fields is Najee Harris is getting no carries inside the 5-yard line right now. Yeah. So Najee Harris has more red zone carries technically than Justin Fields, but he only has 3 red zone carries, and one of them is for -1 yards, right? Yeah. So it's not even like like when they get inside the 5, which isn't often, but when they do, mainly it's been Fields who's been taken off, right? So and now Jaylen Warren is coming back. That might even take Najee out of the game plan a little bit more as well. Yeah. So I think Justin Fields 2 touchdowns, especially at 16-1, given that he already had a 2-touchdown game just a couple weeks ago, I think it's a solid look. So Justin Fields 2 touchdowns at 16-1 is who BMAT is taking for his spicy touchdown bet. Now, I've hit 2 of these already this year in week 1 with Jaden Daniels for 2 touchdowns. Last week I hit T. Higgins for 2 touchdowns. This week, we're going to take a couple of people that we know about already. So Calvin Ridley for 2 touchdowns is who I'm taking. He's around 18-1. And then I'm also pairing him because I wanted a little bit of action on that Commanders-Ravens game. Yeah. I'm pairing him with Terry McLaurin for 2 touchdowns at 14-1. Now, Ridley, already broke it down with my best bet. He has 2 touchdowns. He had a 2-touchdown game versus the Jets in week 2. He had 2 touchdown games last season with the Jaguars. We've seen him used in the red zone for jet sweeps. I just think there's a lot of scoring upside for a Titans home game, especially coming off the bye against this Colts defense. So Calvin Ridley is who I like for 2 touchdowns. But let me talk about McLaurin here, because the Ravens, as awesome as their defense is, low-key just not very good pass defense so far. They're 26th in defensive DVOA versus wide receiver 1, and they're 28th versus the deep ball. And why I bring that up is that McLaurin ranks 3rd in the NFL in ADOT and 3rd in deep target rate. That's for wide receivers who have at least 150 routes run. And both Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they both went for 2 touchdowns versus the Ravens last week. I think the Commanders could be likely in a trailing game script as well, being 6.5-point dogs. Marlon Humphrey, he's going to play, but he was questionable all week. The other corner, Brandon Stevens, he hasn't graded well out either, according to PFF. I just think a game with the highest total of the week, yeah, we got to get some receiver action. Terry McLaurin is who I like for 2 touchdowns. We already talked about Ridley a little while ago. What do you think of McLaurin going up against that Ravens secondary, B-Matt?
I like it. Yeah, I think everyone, when you see that Ravens defense, immediately you just have this like, oh, yeah, I don't know. But I mean, you look at what receivers have done this year, and that's the way to attack them. So if you look, Terry's had like a 40+ yard reception in 2 or 3 of the games this year. So obviously they've got that deep connection, and that's how you beat the Ravens. So I think we'll see plenty of it.
Yeah, and if the Commanders are scoring at the rate that they have been throughout the season, I just think that there's a lot of upside here for McLaurin, especially because the Ravens typically start fast as well. And if they get out to a quick lead with Derrick Henry touchdown and whatnot, that could put the Commanders in a position where they're going to have to throw a lot. And that's who I like, is Terry. So Terry McLaurin for 2 touchdowns at 14-1, Calvin Ridley for 2 touchdowns at 18-1. And BMAT is on Justin Fields for 2 touchdowns at 16-1. All right, BMAT, I want to get out of here, but I want to talk about the 180 challenge. I do one on my own, but I like doing one here for the show as well. So we're going to do a 3-leg parlay for the 180 challenge, get it up to over to 18-1 odds. We're going to put $10 on it. And we're going to use the guest pick today. Jared Smith gave us Jaden Daniels. So that's going to be the first leg. BMAT, what do you think we should use for the second leg for the 180 challenge?
Yeah, I'm still a little peeved about Donayvion Wicks not scoring last week. He paced the team in targets, in everything that you would want. And if you told me that going into the game, I'd have said, yeah, I feel pretty good about that pick. So you know what? I'm going to back, and I'm going to include Donayvion Wicks in this 180 challenge. I like the matchup.
Oh, the Packers Baba Yaga, I believe they call him, Don Wick. All right, so Jaden Daniels, we're going to pair him with Donayvion Wicks. I'm going to put Deontay Johnson. I'm going to put Deontay Johnson. I bet him last week for an anytime touchdown. Obviously, it wasn't as good of a matchup. Bears matchup in the secondary. They're much better. But based on the Falcons, they've given up a lot of touchdowns to wide receiver ones over the last 4 games. 3 touchdowns to wide receiver ones. He's got 30 targets in 3 games with Andy Dalton at quarterback. So I just think, again, trailing game script, Deontay, he's going to get a ton of targets. So let's pair those 3 together. When you pair those 3, you got Jaden Daniels, Donayvion Wicks, and Deontay Johnson. That parlay comes out to around 21-1 at DraftKings. So that's what we're going to do for the 180 challenge for week 6 with the touchdown show. All right, that's all for today. 4 picks from me. We got 3 picks from BMAT. We've got some touchdown parlays on deck. I want to remind everybody that the touchdown show will be back here for week 7 on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, live right after Convince Me during the Action Network Power Hour. And if you missed the show, you want to get our picks, just download the Action app. All of our touchdown bets are tracked there. You can get them as soon as we bet them with instant pick notifications. So I want to thank you for joining us for the touchdown show for week 6. Bonne chance.